Do you... Hello, hello, folks. Just waiting for Dimithri to get on the live. Let me know if you can hear me out there. Hello, hello. Good to see everybody. All right, thank you. Be talking to Hoxpox tonight. I hope you're all excited. Lots to discuss. Hello, hello out there to everybody watching. Just waiting for Dimithri. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for all the likes. Appreciate it. I'm not really doing anything yet. I don't know if I deserve it, but I appreciate it. If anybody has any specific things you'd like to see us discuss tonight about House of X Powers of 10, the X-Men in general, feel free to drop in the questions in the chat. Here we go. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing good. I'm glad I could hear you and see you.
It's been too long.
It has been, man. You grew the facial hair out, like
Oh,
back
it's
again.
back. It's back in a big
That's good.
way.
That's good. In a big way. Is it any different?
Well, in an average way, I guess.
Oh, okay. Well, not average. How dare you?
Thank you.
In a normal way.
Right, exactly. Yeah. No, it
Yeah.
had to be grown back, I think. It was I hate having no facial hair.
It
It's weird.
was it was I've only known you with the beard, so when you shaved it, I was very thrown off. I I didn't know how to react. I was kind of like a baby. You would know this, right? But just a baby
Right,
who
right.
just sees something different. It's just like,
What? I don't know how to compute this.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Well, I'm thrilled you agreed to do this tonight because, as I said in my TikTok last week, you rarely get to be the one in the hot seat. You're usually the one doing the interviews. I don't think you get many opportunities to be the
yeah,
one asked questions. So I'm very excited for this opportunity tonight to talk to you about our beloved House of X Powers of 10 and the X Men in
yeah,
general.
yeah. Uh, you asked me to choose a book, and as I'm like rereading it, uh, because also rarely do I get a chance to reread something
Sure, sure.
because of Comic Talk every week. I'm always reading the current stuff,
Right.
and the goal is to stay on top of current stuff. And being able to reread something, you notice a couple of like new things. I didn't get to finish my reread either, but
Right.
oh, did I notice some interesting things?
Same, yeah, and I think that kind of speaks a lot to the way Jonathan Hickman writes, where I think his work in particular really rewards going back and rereading it and seeing the way all the pieces come together. Because in those first six
Yeah,
issues, he lays out three major storylines that pop up over the next couple of years in
right.
X-Men, which is pretty incredible.
12 issues, right? Wasn't it six
Yes,
and
you're right.
six?
You're right. I'm sorry because it's 6 and 6. I'm like it's all just one thing in my head. But yes, you are correct. It
It's
is
it,
technically
it's weird because I mean, if this was a six-fingered person, it's this way, right? Like
exactly.
it's
Yes.
back and forth.
Yeah. It
But yeah,
actually this is very cute on their part. It technically like DNA helixes because it goes. If you look at the original like listing they
is
had,
that
it's
what it
like
is?
yeah. Because if you look at the original listing, one of the weeks it doubled up. It's like Hawks, Pox, Hawks, Pox, Pox, Hawks, Pox, Hawks, Pox. So it's supposed to be like a DNA helix, like it overlaps and then keeps going.
And may I add something else?
Yes.
If what you're saying, I'm trying to visualize it. The fact that it does pox pox is the mutation,
There you go. Layers within layers. But to
right?
start us off with this discussion, I wanted to ask you because in our various comic talk discussions, you always go back to talking about how like the X-Men is like one of your number ones. It's like one of your go-tos, one of your favorites. Not just the Hickman, but it seems like X-Men in general. So I wanted to ask, how did this love for the X-Men start for you? Like, what was it that got you into them? Why do you love them so much? Where did that passion begin?
Never overstate the significance of Saturday morning cartoons, right? It's so interesting how a bunch of us who grew up in the 90s, a lot of what we know is the Saturday morning cartoons. And even the continuity of the Saturday morning cartoons is now in our heads as what that continuity is,
Right,
right?
right.
So even when a cartoon changes the continuity of who is Robin and who is Nightwing and who are the love interests, and even if it was created just for the show Harley Quinn for Batman
Sure.
the animated series, we're like, yeah, Harley's always been around, right? And it's like, no,
Right.
she was created for the cartoon. But if that was the first thing you saw Batman related, like me, I went back and I was like, why isn't Harley in Batman 89?
Sure.
I
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought I thought she was.
Right.
I was like, okay, that blonde girl, which was Kim Basinger. I was like, okay, she's Harley, right? Is that because
Right, right.
who do I care who Vicky Vale is?
Right, right.
Yeah,
That is a
you
very
know.
good point.
So I
You're
forget where you were.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I forget. I forget what you were asking. But
Well,
what
no,
were you
but I
saying?
think that's a great point that Saturday morning cartoons influence that love of X-Men for you. That's what I
Yeah,
refer to as the Pizza Hut X-Men. That's like if you were a kid and you went to Pizza Hut in the 90s, you love that version of the X-Men because that was just everywhere. Yeah. So it started with the
right.
cartoon, and then how did it eventually get into the comics for you?
Ooh, I went down an interesting road. So the cartoon was a big thing for me. Did I fully understand the political and social allegories? No,
Yeah.
right? But what I did, by the way, how's my connection right now? Is my connection bad? Is your connection bad?
You're coming through pretty clear for me. Am I coming through kind of weird for you, or?
Okay, cool. No, no, no. I mean, there was a weird thing earlier, but then I'm looking at like my Wi-Fi and trying to figure it out.
No, you're coming
And I
through
think
clear
I,
for
I
me.
think I should be good. JDC 0893 says it's fine. All right,
All right.
cool.
Thanks,
And
JDC.
then Mike the Beast says, "Hey chat, hey good people." So that's nice. Thanks,
Hey.
Mike the Beast. Um, so what was I saying? What was the how did I get into it? So with X-Men, it was the cartoon, and then I started moving into Batman and Superman and stuff territory. I would have to say at a certain point in my young adult or like in my childhood, I switched over mostly to DC, Justice League specifically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Avengers didn't interest me, and X Men's always been X-Men has mostly been my number one throughout time, but there were some gaps. Anyway, the point being is I went to Barnes and Noble and I saw the flashy, cool covers, which specifically, I got this one later. It's up there somewhere. They're the Executioner song.
Executioner song, yes.
Yeah. So like the art, oh, and we got a couple of cool people in the chat right now. Not sure exactly what it means, how much to get started though. I guess if you pay me directly, I'll get you started on some comics. Is that what people are asking? Anyway, so I got into X-Men. I saw the flashy stuff and I started like looking up online like what these things were. And this is basic internet back in '99, right? And so Uncanny X-Men Uncanny X-Men.net, I think it was, and then PlanetX.com, I think it was. And so I was just on the internet like looking up X-Men stuff, right? But the real big thing, you want to know what the real big thing that got me into comics was?
What was
and
that?
Sure, I was into comics before then, and I was into comics after. Ultimate Marvel. Ultimate Marvel changed everything. And I'll tell you why. On Marvel.com, they had a thing called Marvel.comics.
Yep.
And it was free. And I read Ultimate Spider-Man, I read Ultimate X-Men, I read the Ultimates.
Yes.
And sure,
they
for my development,
and I want to
they gave them
emphasize
for
this for
free.
anybody watching this, they were just giving those away for free on a regular basis. And that
as a motion comic
website.
too.
Yeah, it basically a proto version of what Comixology does, where it was like zoomed in panel by panel, a guided reading program. And that's so funny you say that, because that was exactly what got me into Marvel too. It was
say what you want. Say what you want about Ultimate Marvel, but they gave it for free, and they got young me interested in it.
Same. Yeah.
So
and then at a certain point, they must have stopped doing that, because then at a certain point, I was like, oh, I need to read what happens next, and it's not on the website anymore, so I'm going to have to find a comic shop.
It happened after Ultimates Volume 2 ended.
Okay.
Ultimates 2 ended. So after that ended, before Ultimates 3 happened, that's what, because I remember not having read Ultimates 3 and reading it in the bookstore. Because I used to do that a lot too. I used to go to the bookstore and read. I got kicked out of a comic shop once because I was 16, I think, and I went to the comic shop and I just started reading. And the guy was like, and
MarvelComics.com? Get out of here! Don't give it away.
I went in and I was reading the comic, and I get this. I think there might have been a better way to say this, but I get this. He was like, it's not a library. You got to buy it. And I was like, I get this. So I was like, okay. So I packed it away and I left, and I never went back.
Right.
You know, because I get it. I get the comic books the stores need to make money, and you don't want like the riffraff. And I guess maybe I was the riffraff, just coming in and reading your comics and not buying. Right. At the same time, though, I didn't have any money. So the question comes, especially to me, to you, to people in our comic book community, how do we keep up with comics if we don't have money?
Right.
How do we feel? Because the industry needs our money. It does, to stay afloat.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
But at the same time, it needs our passion and our fandom.
Yeah.
And that's, sometimes we don't have as much money as our passion allows us to. You know?
And what you're saying is a perfect illustration of that, because they literally gave you what I think in my memory it was like at least the first 12 or 13 issues of Ultimate Spider-Man you could read for free on that website. I remember
it kept going. It kept
was going for a while, because I remember the first issue I actually picked up a physical copy of, which got like beat to hell because I brought it to school every day, was I think issue 13. It's the one where he tells Mary Jane he's Spider-Man, and the cover's like him holding the mask in his hand, and you see her reflect in the eyes. But you gave people, first you gave them an easy jumping on point, and second you made it free. And I don't understand why they did that. Business-wise, it was probably not the smartest decision, but I've been reading.
For me, it was a smart decision.
Yeah,
because I went out and I bought them.
Yeah.
So you know what I did? I had only enough money to pay for one series. in
Right.
either trade or issues. The one series I bought from beginning to end is Ultimate X-Men.
There you go.
And I have all my volumes of Ultimate X-Men down in
There
this
you go.
corner. You can kind of see the Marvel red and white. It's stacked
Right,
upwards.
right.
That's my Ultimate X-Men because I don't have space sideways to put it. But anyway, the point being is, I went out and I bought it. So technically, it paid off. And technically, I mean, I did buy the Ultimates as
A
well,
long-term
and a
investment,
couple.
but it did pay off.
It's a lot. Yeah, there's some guy at Marvel right now being like, finally, the stars have aligned, you know, and our investment is paying off in dividends, you
Right.
know.
So for you then, like pre this series, House of X Powers of 10, like was Ultimate X-Men kind of the defining X-Men for you, or is there another X-Men book or story that was like, this is what I envision as the ideal X-Men?
Ideal X-Men was Ultimate X-Men for a
Mm-hmm.
long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and side question from Fantabulous Logan. I can't answer too many questions on here, but I love the fact that you guys are here. If anyone does have any questions, throw it out. I'll try to answer what I can. Which Ultimate X-Men character has the strongest story? I guess
Ooh.
an easier question to ask is which Ultimate X-Men character is my favorite, because I feel like all the characters are intertwined and nobody, for the most part, really gets a solo story.
Yeah.
But the most interesting Ultimate X-Men character, um, oh man, I don't. Nightcrawler was pretty cool until they did a hard right with him, and then literally made him not cool anymore. Like
They
he
did
got like
some
what?
they did some pretty interesting stuff with Colossus being gay in the Ultimate Universe.
Yeah,
That I don't
yeah.
know how well it holds up in modern times, but I remember that being one of the first times I ever was exposed to a queer comic book character, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember Ultimate Colossus being a big deal back in the day.
Yeah.
That in a bad way, because people complained, and
Right.
people are always going to complain about it. And now we're 20 years later, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh, have things changed? No,
No.
trolls still going to be trolls, you know.
The
But you're
entire
right.
legislative body of Florida is going to tell you not to
Yeah.
say the word gay, period. For you.
Fantabulous Logan says besides Storm, and I would say actually reminding me of Storm, the best X-Men is Beast.
Mm.
I think Beast goes through the
Why do you feel
biggest
that way?
ups and downs,
Sure,
and so
sure, yeah.
I would say Beast in that, which is interesting. Sorry, getting back to your question
Yeah.
of what got me in. So Ultimate X-Men kind of really got me into this interpretation of this, while I tried to pick up bits and pieces of Extreme X-Men.
Okay, but that was the one of the big X books that was getting pushed at that time, because that was like,
And I love the art,
I think
and
Claremont
I'm
was the
gonna
only one was writing that, if I
yeah,
remember correctly.
yeah. And Salvador LaRocca was doing
Yes.
the art.
Yes.
And I'm gonna be honest, as a young boy going through puberty, I loved the art. I loved the art. Everybody looked good, and Rogue and Psylocke and Sage were like on my mind 24 hours. Oh, Storm in that outfit. They all got like weird thigh
Armor, like
thigh high armor,
drawn.
but thigh high garters and
Yeah, it
stuff
was
like that.
bizarre.
Like it was like spandex leather armor garters. Say that 5 times fast. You
And
know?
I remember seeing the ad for that in, I want to say, Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Spider-Man, and having the reaction of like, am I supposed to be looking at this? Is this allowed? Can I? Is it okay that
Yeah.
I have this? But yes, yeah, I remember that very well. You're really giving
Yeah.
me some nostalgic flashbacks right now to early 2000s.
At the same time, a lot
Marvel.
of people don't know this part. I went online and I would save images. I would just save images. They would be comic covers, they'd be comic panels. Any images that I found online, I would right click save as and label it and create just a folder of comic book images. Just they're not all they're not in a sexual way. Not in a sexual way. But in a like, I love the medium of art and I cannot read it all, and I can't even like firsthand experience it all. So I'm gonna save these images, these comic covers, whatever, and then I would like draw on the side and kind of use it to kind of create
Very
my
cool.
like art. And
That sounds
so
like the origin of the Keeg Show. you saving images that are going to get reused for later.
I mean, I mean, everything in my life was a build up to the Keeg Show. The Keeg is just a way for me to uh, uh, justify having spent, so many years of my life into this whole thing, right? Got to have
Right.
something come out of it. Yeah.
Well, so then
And
leading up to
sorry,
go ahead.
Fantabulous Logan is in my chat a lot. What's up, Fantabulous Logan? Once again, I can't
What's
get to
up?
everything, but uh, Beast is the model minority who tries to keep the peace. But we don't need to get there just yet. All right.
Well, so what I was going to say is for you, then leading into this book, like, what were your general thoughts on it as it's coming out? What are your feelings about it now? Like, you were someone who went into this as an X-Men fan, and what I found very interesting is that I find that people who went into this as X-Men fans either really love it or strongly dislike it. There's no middle ground, and I'm someone who liked the X-Men, but I certainly wasn't someone who had read everything, so I use this as an opportunity to jump in, and I've grown to love this new status quo. But for you,
Yeah.
as someone who already loved the X-Men, how did you feel about this getting into it and seeing the way it was radically changing the mutants? What were your thoughts?
Um. So first thing, get me in touch with anyone who is a X-Men fan who dislikes this. I would love to know their reasoning. Um. Um. Other than some characters are written a little bit weird, but I figure like that's part of the whole mystery of it all, right?
Their primary critique, if we want to sidebar that real fast, because it's easy to
Yeah.
explain, their primary critique was that it's such a major status quo shift that they felt it was kind of a cheat to sort of have a lot of it happen off panel.
Mm.
That they kind of like jumped ahead to where the story gets the most interesting, rather
Uh,
than have the story of the development of Krakoa be like a year long or however long arc. It was more like
yeah.
you buy that first issue and they're like, hey, we now have an entire country.
Right.
It gets right to the most juicy part
I
of
like
everything.
it. I liked it, and they do go back and they tell past stories too.
Right,
So
right.
like, what's the big deal? You know what I mean? Badass Papa says, "How about just enjoy the stories?" Yeah, yeah.
Sure,
And
sure.
media res. Would we stick with this if we saw an issue just dedicated to like some random flower that was like foreshadowed late? Like, no, just like
Right,
get
right.
to it. They go back in time, like in Inferno. They go back in time and they talk about Cipher
Sure,
and
yeah, yeah,
whatnot. Right?
yeah.
Cool. I like that. That's great.
Right.
But this is a mystery and this is hardcore science fiction. X-Men has always been
Yes.
science fiction, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, because any science fiction concept appears in comics,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Any science fiction concept. And so clones, going back in time Terminator style, space empires, uh, 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 ghostly possession,
Right.
alien
Killer AI
shapeshifter.
robots. Yeah.
Right, right. We every science fiction time travel, alternate universes,
Right.
mirror universes, which are a little bit different, right? Like multiple dimensions, yeah, demons, magic, right?
Right.
It's
It's all
all
there.
there in X-Men, which is
Yes.
batshit crazy. What this does, what Hoxpox does, for anyone out there, House of X Powers of 10, I call it Hoxpox, a lot of people do. Um, what it does is it's, in a way, it's tying the knot on all those concepts and then
Mm.
branching out kind of from there, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so Hoxpox is able to do that by like jumping in the middle of things and being like, okay, hardcore science fiction concepts. Let's do the utopia dystopia as Fantabulous slogan,
Sure.
you know. And a non-golden goose. What's up, golden goose? What's up, goosey? Heard X-Men in the void. Now I've been summoned. Yes. So um, basically, uh, basically now we get to start fresh. And the cool thing about X-Men, or well, X-Men is it's had a pretty continuous storyline. The characters have gotten older, whereas let's just say Captain America hasn't gotten older. The X-Men have aged,
Mm.
fallen in love, gotten married, have kids. Sure, there's time travel shenanigans and de-aging and whatever involved, but like
They
time has
progress
passed.
forward more than a lot of Marvel characters do.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I would
And
agree with that.
so with that, there's a history of characters dying and get brought back to life. And then there's characters that just get forgotten about and then brought back 10 years later, 20 years later. Sure. But what this does, Hoxpox does, just from the get go, is bring all these characters back to life,
Right, right.
which is crazy.
And makes that explicitly part of the story. Makes the idea that no one's ever going to stay dead in the X-Men universe now a fundamental part of the society that they've developed.
Right, right. So we're dealing with like a utopian society, which also, as you read it, makes it also hits me in like up here where I'm like,
Yeah.
that would be cool in real life.
Right.
That could happen.
Right. But
If.
then you also have all of these ethical and moral quandaries that come up by
Right.
the thought of, well, what would it mean if death no longer had any meaning? Or what does it mean if you die and you get put into this body that they've created? Is that still truly you? What is
Right.
happening here in all of
Right.
this? And another complaint my friend had, which I found kind of funny, was they were sort of critiquing that idea of being like, this feels too weird to me, it feels wrong to do this. But what I think is interesting about Hoxpox and everything that happened after it is they also are like, no, yeah, it's reasonable to say this is weird and messed up, and characters are going to have strong reactions and feelings about this, and they're going to discuss whether these things are actually moral and ethical, or is it wrong for them to do the things that they're doing.
Right.
And I kind of love that because you were like, oh, it's all these genres, and now X-Men has really explicitly become political thriller and political intrigue in a way that it never really was before because it's about a nation state.
Right. And what's cool is they also, out of Hoxpox comes like 12, at least 12 different series,
Yeah.
each one with a different flavor, right? So if you like
Right.
the Black Ops stuff, you got X-Force. If you like the detective stuff, you got X Factor. If
Right.
you want like political intrigue, you have the X-Men proper title.
Right.
Until they do their retitling in a month or so.
Yeah.
Like you pick and choose. You want the
Yeah.
magic, you go Excalibur. And you just read Hoxpox, and anyone with a even bare understanding of X-Men lore, read Hoxpox, Wikipedia any questions that you have, and continue just reading what you want to read. You know?
Right. Right. What do you think for you as you were reading this? Who are the standout characters for you? Like, what are the standout characters that you're like, maybe someone who you loved and you're like, I'm so glad to see them getting their due finally, or someone who you're like, I never thought about this person being interesting, but they're actually pretty cool. Who really stood out to you in this book?
Um, I guess first and foremost, the application of Doug Ramsey, Cypher,
Yeah, yeah,
and Warlock and Krakoa being
right,
in a partnership together where they're kind of one mind. That is an interesting application of their each individual powers. The
sure,
fact that like they're thinking about a lot of these characters in this Krakoa age, they think about like how can we combine our powers to make something new.
totally, yeah,
Um, the New Mutants title explicitly states that. But what we see though is like, yeah, how do we work together? How does someone like Sinister work within the fabric of our society? Like,
right,
can we trust him? Is he like? I guess I mean, he serves a purpose, but like,
right,
we need to figure this out. You know.
right,
Um, so those three are cool. They the applicate or the retcon, so to speak, of Moira McTaggart
yeah,
is interesting because in my mind, Moira is uh the mother of Proteus.
mm-hmm.
In the cartoon, Proteus is Xavier's kid, right? But not in the comic.
Right. I think they in the cartoon they kind of merged Proteus and Legion
Yeah, yeah, because they
into
don't have
one
Legion.
character. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So in the cartoon, Moira and Xavier make Proteus. In Ultimate X-Men, Moira and Xavier make Proteus. It
Mm-hmm.
confuses a lot of people when they come to 616 comics. Proteus isn't his kid. Legion
Right.
is, right?
Right.
But Proteus also, the application of the five,
Very cool.
Like the five being five mutants that are part of the resurrection protocols, and then they also have backups to it.
Right.
And then I love Sword. Sword has the same kind of deal where they're like they need people of specific power sets to keep the organization of Sword running,
Right.
and so they have backups for that. And like Cortez is like, I'm the only guy who could do this. I can do what I want. And they're like, actually, we got this one from Araco, and then he's like, uh-oh. So
And
uh
I would love to have been a fly on the wall in the meetings where they figured out how to combine people's powers. Like I'm just imagining Jonathan Hickman and the team with this giant list of mutants and then pulling people off and putting them on the whiteboard and being like, all right, who resurrects people? Let's take this person, this person. Let's figure out how
right.
Gold Balls fits into all
They
of
had
this.
to
Like,
they had to figure out like a retcon to gold balls. They had to like it's so weird because they literally everybody else roughly keeps the same power set, but
right.
gold balls had to be retconned that his gold balls are eggs. In a way, they are full of nutrients, I guess,
Right,
right?
right, yes.
And
Which, hey,
so
sure. I mean, what else were
okay,
they? Because I guess it's
I
like,
mean,
well, what was he creating? Some kind of synthetic material that he shot out of his
yeah, I
body?
I always thought they were some sort of elastic rubber type
Right,
bling bling
right,
bling, like dodgeballs. But
right,
it
right.
is what it is.
Is it weird that the idea of him actually just like shooting eggs out of his body almost makes more sense? I don't know.
Unfertilized eggs. We also have
Yeah.
to change our idea of what eggs are to be able to not be grossed out by it. It isn't
Right,
a chicken's egg, and it's also not a human's egg.
right, right.
What I mean,
It's
I guess the closest is like an unfertilized fish egg, where it's like
that's a good way of
jelly.
looking at it. Yeah,
But
and
like,
has some
you
kind
have
of
to think of
speed
it as
behind it when he launches them.
yeah. That being said, you have to think of it like it's not organic because no one can naturally fertilize that egg.
Right.
Like his power doesn't allow people to fertilize his eggs.
As far as we know.
Oh, all
There's
right,
someone
all
on
right,
Araco that could probably do it.
yeah. By the
There's
way,
some
let's
weird
talk.
fish thing on Araco that could probably do
Okay,
it.
let's talk about this pronunciation because this is something that's
Yes,
popped up ever
yes.
since the second island appeared. Arakko, which
Right,
is just a anagram of Krakoa, but
right,
it's
right,
the other island, right?
right.
Arakko, and then the people are called Arakki.
Right,
Now, I would say I used to call it Araco.
right.
That makes sense. But then with that pronunciation, you would call the people Iraqi. But
Which
it
is a
sounds
thing
too
that
much
already
like,
exists.
which is a thing that already exists. And the way I try to do it and I mess it up is Araco Araki. I think
After
that might be
you,
the easy.
you know what's funny? After you pointed it out on the Keeg one time, I've consciously
Yeah,
been saying Araki because I was like,
yeah.
yeah, it would be
Because
weird to say
Iraqi.
Iraqi. It feels wrong
Yeah,
because it's
yeah.
already a group of people to then call this fictional race of weirdo mutants Iraqi. It's not right. It
Right,
should be
right. So I guess
Araki.
yeah, I guess the emphasis on R. So Araki, Araco.
Right, right. I mean,
Potato,
that's the.
potato.
But the beautiful thing about comics is you never have to say it out loud. You can just read it
I would
and never
like
have to think about it too hard.
I would like to hope that in universe the people of Iraq aren't like, hey, stop calling us the same name. Like, what?
Right.
What's up at Mars? Like,
Yeah,
this is
what's
not the
going on?
same. Yeah. So, yeah.
So, what is your thoughts then on? I mean, now that we've talked a little bit about characters and some of the standouts for you, what are your thoughts on the idea of Krakoa being sort of the new status quo for the mutants? Because for anybody watching who didn't know, Jonathan Hickman kind of came on board with this sort of being a temporary thing, but the success of it has kind of made Marvel say, no, we're going to commit to this being their status quo for the time being. And
Yeah.
to the point where I'm like, I don't know if they're ever going to potentially undo this because I think it provides so many storytelling options. So I'm curious, like, did you initially have any, resistance to the idea? Do you embrace it more now? Were you always like, this is great for them? What are your thoughts on this being their status quo?
I can't look at the comics as an island because it affects other sorts of media, right?
Sure,
And
sure.
so what we've seen, especially from DC, but also from Marvel to an extent, is the want to make comic storylines into movies without having the build up for it. DC does it way more. You can't have the death of Superman until you have like the life and glory of Superman, but
Right.
they did it anyway. Why do you have Flashpoint be the first Flash movie? Why
Don't
do
get
you
me
have
started.
essentially Dark Knight Returns be the first time you see Batman in the DC, right? Like, but in Marvel to an extent, like Civil War happened so early, but they also changed the storyline to make it a smaller scope kind of thing.
Sure.
But in the comics, it's the whole like Marvel Earth,
Right.
that is involved with all the different families and whatnot. So so I would say that I love this stuff in the comics. I don't want them to do this in the movies. Also, we have to differentiate between Inhumans, mutants, Eternals. Like we don't like these secret groups of people. Like the MCU can only handle so many, and we got to make them all different, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
let's hold our horses on this thing. This only works. This House of X, Powers of X only works as a buildup of, I guess, in universe 10 years. That would make sense.
Yeah,
That's
with
what
the
that's
sliding
what it
time
says.
scale, maybe like 10 to 15. I guess it would have to be, right? Powers of 10. Yeah, it would have to be
It
10
it has
years.
to be
Have to be, right? Powers of 10. Yeah, it would have to be
it
10
has
years.
to be X-Men. It has to be 10 years.
Right,
Like
right.
that's how they state it. So if Kitty is 16, she's 26 now. That kind of makes
Right.
sense, right?
That makes sense. Yeah, yeah.
You
It makes
know,
more sense than like New 52, all of the Robins existed in a 5-year time span.
right,
That was
right,
like too much, too many Robins. But
right,
yeah, I could see all of it happening within 10 years ish. Yeah, that
right.
makes sense to me.
Which means X-Men or that Captain America has been around for 10 years too, and the
Sure.
Fantastic Four. The Marvel Age of Heroes has only been 10 years.
Right, right. Or you could even make the case that, like, the X-Men maybe came along slightly later than some of the others, but like, maybe Cap's been there around for 15, and the X-Men have probably barely been around for
Well,
10.
Cap came around after the Avengers, and the Avengers came around after
True,
Fantastic
true,
Four.
true.
So Cap, I mean, what happens in X-Men Year One is Moira
It's
meeting
when Moira
Xavier,
and Professor Xavier first meet. Yeah.
and I'm pretty much that's probably right at the start. And so
Right.
a lot has happened in 10 years. But all right, uh, what were you saying about what was your original question?
No, I was saying that you talked about the movies, but for the comics specifically, you like the idea of Krakoa being their status quo going forward.
Because they built up to it, right? And
Sure.
so because as an X-Men fan, I know that everything has happened since. Okay, they've just had a very busy life. Fair. And it only works as that. So I would hate to see this in the MCU, but as a longtime comic fan, this is the story that I built up to my whole life
Right. Sure.
as an
sure.
X-Men fan, right?
Right.
Because so I was continuously reading X-Men from House of M onwards. I had read, some of Grant Morrison, some of Joss Whedon. I had gotten that, right? So I had lived that, and I have it now. But like back in the day, that was I couldn't really read comics, right? Like I couldn't afford it. And so later on, House of M onwards, that's when I like really got into it. So I've read it through House of M, Decimation, their move to San Francisco, what do we got? I try to collect everything. Messiah Complex, Second Coming, all that stuff.
You're very well versed in this. Yeah.
Yeah, all the way till Age of X-Man, where I stopped. And that's the storyline right before House of X, Powers of X.
There you go.
And Age of X-Man was a letdown, and they did some big stuff in there that I was like, I can't read it right now. So I stopped reading it, and then I went back and I read it. And I stopped reading it, and then I went back and I read it. And I went back and I read it after I read Hoxpox, and I went into it a little bit. I was like, I wonder what happened right before it. It's weird. It is. It is. They kill a lot of people, and then they attempt. Have you read it? Have you read
I'm
the?
not, no, because I was kind of it, Ultimate X-Men was a clean break into X-Men for me. So most of my exposure to X-Men came through movies, cartoons, Ultimate X-Men. And the dense continuity of mainline X-Men was just so intimidating for me.
You
I was
got a
like,
you got a mainline X Men.
literally, you have to
Yeah.
catch up on all that. And what's funny is now I'm collecting the X-Men classic reprints from the '80s, so I can read the Claremont stuff. They also have like
I
these
do
interesting
I do
backstories in them.
essential. I do
Yeah,
essential X Men.
yeah.
That's the
I
fair.
don't mind the essential books, but sometimes I get sad not seeing the colors. You know what I mean?
I do too, but it's also that was one
It's
of the first
cheaper
comics I had.
too.
I had Essential X Men #1,
Wow.
which is giant size X Men and
So the
onward.
start of like the Claremont era stuff.
Yeah, that's what I
Gotcha.
had
Yeah,
when
yeah,
I was younger.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
because it was more
and
bang for my buck.
exactly like in those days, in that it's cheaper. The nice thing about these X Men classic books is they're mostly like sitting in dollar bins because they're just reprints.
Mm,
But I also just find them fun. They got
yeah.
cool Mike Magnolia covers at one point, which is nice.
Okay.
But anyway, but yeah, so because of that, I never got into it. So I love Jonathan Hickman, and there was so much hype around it. I was like, you know what, this feels like the perfect moment for me to finally commit to X-Men. And now I get like 8 X-Men titles a month. Now I'm
Right.
totally in on it and invested in it.
Right.
But it's funny because like for me, Krakoa as a concept is so interesting to me and so intriguing to me that like my idea of the X-Men is so linked now to the idea of them having their own nation and so many of the villains now being unlikely allies or full now face heroes. Like I never gave a fuck about Apocalypse until X of Swords, and X of Swords came out, and I'm like, Apocalypse is my favorite character. The way he's written in that story, I found him so compelling and interesting, and that was the
Yeah.
most I've ever liked him.
The most interesting thing about Apocalypse to me
Mm-hmm.
didn't even have to do with me reading the comics, because again, I couldn't afford them back in the day when I was a
Right.
kid. The 12. The concept of the 12 was like mind blowing to me. It scratched all my itches just be on the
Mm-hmm.
outside looking in. Because with the 12, it was a prophecy with vague descriptions about 12 core mutants that would bring about either
Right,
the
right.
end or the return of Apocalypse. And you have to have the magnetic north and south. They're like, it was prophecies, right? Magnetic north and south, Polaris and Magneto. And then they're like the east and the west. And like, it was like, I think it was like Sunfire and somebody else. And like, it was like, and then it was all these like 12 very integral mutants. And like, that was like the most interesting thing about Apocalypse. And then I was not interested in Apocalypse because I
Right,
didn't
right.
really care. Because it's also
Yeah.
hard to hammer down what Apocalypse's powers are when you're younger. You're like,
To
he can
this
just do anything.
day, if you ask me, I was like, I don't know. He's a big,
Yeah,
scary. He looks like a Power Ranger villain. I don't know
right.
how to
He could
describe
just
what his
kind of
powers
do
are.
whatever.
Yeah,
So the most interesting Apocalypse has been is in this Krakoan age where they have to work with him.
right, right.
And
And
he
him,
goes to the UN, and like
yes.
you
Oh
have
my god.
Magneto, you have Apocalypse in a suit, which really
In a
looks like just
giant
like
tuxedo.
it looks like The Rock when The Rock wears a suit. Like it's like, how do you get a suit that fits The Rock?
Right, right.
Like, you got to get it like a triple XL suit at least, and then tailor it to half its size around the waist. You know.
Right. And I
So
love the
eh,
scene when Apocalypse first arrives on Krakoa and everybody's like kind of on edge and he's like, "No, you don't understand. This is what I've always wanted you to do. I'm
yeah,
thrilled about this.
yeah,
This is my dream fulfilled."
yeah,
And that moment I was like, "Oh, this guy's more interesting than I thought." And then the whole story of like he had this family before. He's like a deadbeat dad who went out for cigarettes and now his kids are mad at him. I was like, Apocalypse, great character. I'm fascinated by him. So cool.
yeah. It's funny because he's considered weak when it comes to Araco.
Right, right. Yeah. And the thought of that there would be people who would look down on Apocalypse, it's like, damn, this Araco is a country of badasses. It's pretty crazy.
But with a whole different culture. What's also cool about this Hoxpox is they have created a mutant culture.
Yes.
And
Yes.
sure, do I wish they brought a linguistic professor or a linguist to have created a new Krakoan language that isn't just a alphabet swap?
Sure. Yeah.
Yes, like Elvish or Dothraki. Those are like
Yeah.
its own languages that were
Right.
created
Right.
linguistically. I wish they had brought in. Marvel doesn't have the. They don't want to go like maybe they don't want to go like too crazy with it. But it would have been cool to have a linguistic professor or a linguist or whatever be like, oh, okay, this is the Krakoan language.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they
That would have been
created a
dope.
new language. They created a new status quo on Krakoa that makes you like wonder. You're right. In the real world, why like culture is just they're social constructs, right?
Right. Right.
Why do we do the things that we do? Why couldn't we change that?
Right. Yeah. And I
You
think
know?
you see that manifest in different interesting ways. Like I think Way of X is probably one of my favorite of these books and is all about that idea of mutant religion and this idea that the mutants are trying to create a society that's based on restorative practice rather than punitive justice. And we're starting
Right.
to see that a little bit in the Sabretooth miniseries, where Sabretooth is kind of having this existential dark night of the soul, where he's like, what have I been doing my entire life? I just murder, murder, murder? Is that even worthwhile? Like, what am I doing?
It changes a lot of things when you say that you're immortal and that you're a
Yes,
society
yes.
full of immortals, that death does not matter. So then, how does that manifest in the way people do things? For instance, just a small thing, a lot of mutants get tattoos
Mm-hmm.
because they feel like in the next however many years, they're probably going to die and then get resurrected.
Right,
So tattoos don't have to be immortal,
right.
or tattoos don't have to be, for the rest of your
Permanent,
life,
forever. Yeah.
permanent. Also, what is partnership? What is love and sex and like coupling? If you live for 1,000 years,
Right. Yeah.
what is like all these like hardcore philosophies for survival? What do they mean if yes,
You don't
you
have to
are
worry
going
about
to survive?
survival.
You
Right.
don't
Yeah.
have to, which
Yeah.
is the first time in human history. Because even nowadays in real life, we do worry about survival, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
our philosophies are based off of survival. But if you
Mm-hmm.
have these things in check where you don't have to worry about that, what is then the next big thing?
Right. And it feels appropriate for that story to be told with the X-Men because it's about evolution, right?
Right,
It's saying like how does humans or how does a society evolve when the thing that is its biggest hindrance has been removed from them. You no
right,
longer have the fear of death. What becomes your next step? What becomes a society without that hanging over it?
right,
And I also think that's why I think that's part of the reason why this new status quo has been so beloved and so popular because people I think just like seeing the X-Men finally win. It's
yeah,
being an X-Men fan means having to watch these characters you love suffer miserably and they
uh huh,
finally get a chance to say, "Hey, no, we won. We have conflict still, sure, but we no longer have to live in fear the way we once did. We won."
right,
And what does that mean for us?
yeah. I have to point out something because if we run out of time, I won't be able to talk about it. Where is Moira's sixth life?
Where's Moira's
It's
sixth life?
missing.
Is it still
It's missing.
missing?
Is it?
I'm
It's not a print error. It's not a
no.
story error. Her sixth life specifically is not talked about.
Wasn't that the one that they reveal later in
In
the
what do they reveal?
series? Because there's one that you don't see in the beginning, and then later on, as the comic goes, there's one that is revealed
What is it?
later. It's let me see. Oh, nope, that's not it. It's somewhere. I would have to try and look it up and find it. But I think it's like a twist ending to one of the issues that the Sixth Life is revealed. Isn't it the one where she's like in the sarcophagus? Isn't that the Sixth Life? Am
Oh,
I
okay.
crazy?
There is a sixth life twist. Sorry, it's been a while since I.
Oh no, it's the
Uh,
one where they're in the zoo. That's what it is.
Wait, the
Yeah.
X. Oh, the year 1000 timeline
Yes.
is the
Yes.
sixth life.
Yes. Because up for so much of that series, you're just seeing like we're super super far in the future, and we don't understand what the relevance of this story is until you get into the zoo and you see Wolverine and Moira there, and that's what the sixth life
Yeah.
is. And but that's not
Okay.
revealed till like the
Okay.
last issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I uncovered something because I did uncover some small other things,
What were
which
some of the
is
things?
they
Yes, go for
mentioned
it.
they mentioned Mars, which only comes
Yes.
to fruition in Giant Size X Men or Planet Size X Men #1
Like a year and a half
years later.
later. Yeah.
Right, because we're also meant to think that like Mars is in the future, but
Right.
no,
Right.
it's like a year
No.
after this. Like
It's very
you
soon.
know, yeah.
There's the
So there's
discussion
like
of Apocalypse makes an allusion to Araco when he first gets to
oh
Krakoa. He was like, I was here once and fought a great battle. And I was like,
oh
oh shit, he's talking about X of Swords. Like it was like there's X of Swords, there's Planet Size X-Men, there's so
yeah
much little like lines of dialogue that end up getting paid
yeah
off years down the line in that series. It's crazy.
yeah. Um, Basically, what Hickman has done is he says that he has Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. He knows that Act 2 can stretch as long as you want,
Mm-hmm.
and then Act 3 is how you close up this whole thing.
Right.
And so Hickman has left, which means they're spinning on Act 2 until Hickman comes back, right?
Which, with
That's what
all
I
the
got.
books that they've got coming out, I'm kind of like, spin away. I find
I'm
this
cool with
really
it.
interesting,
Yeah.
and yeah, I can't wait to see where they're gonna go next. It's been
But
crazy.
there's some really cool things that come out of this. Like in the whole Hellfire Gala thing, the fact that like Namor doesn't he is so pissed off just at everything, being like, I don't want to be on the quiet council, I'm a king. Like,
yeah,
and it's like I guess Namor, but like I guess you're right, Namor, but at the same time, like, stop being a dick, dude. All your people are like dying all the time. Like Atlantis is always like in ruins,
right.
you
But I
know?
think that speaks so perfectly to his character, where it's like if he didn't have the idea, he wants nothing to do with it.
Right.
You know,
If he's not top dog.
exactly. If he's not the one who's the founder of Krakoa, he's not going to be involved in any way.
Right. Right.
Which
He
sums
can't
him
play
up perfectly.
second fiddle, you know?
Right. Exactly.
And so there's a lot of like really cool things that make me be like, oh yeah, I like the political intrigue of I like the political intrigue of this new era of X-Men.
Yeah.
You know?
And the world building in general, like you mentioned the Hellfire Gala, who knew that one of the most fun things about this would be them just doing like, here's a bunch of fashion drawings of the X-Men, enjoy. Like go
Right.
nuts. Like that is
Because
that's
that's mutant culture.
fan's dream. Yes. Mutant culture, but
Right.
I think that also taps into what fans, well, not all fans, but like there are definitely certain types of fans that love the idea of what if we apply, well, not all fans, but like there are definitely certain types of fans that love the idea of what if we applied real world fashion to these superhero characters. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think it tapped into that so beautifully. You love to see
Yeah.
it.
I also like I think what we've realized, and it's funny because we used to scoff at slice of life. Like we used to scoff at it and be like, well, I don't want a book where just Batman and Nightwing are just sitting around a dinner table and talking.
Right.
But nowadays, when we realize that like we've gotten the opposite for so long in comics, where it's like almost easier just to see them punch than to talk and like create something, I think there is half the fandom who wants slice of life again.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
we get that now. Like we get that in X-Men, and we're getting it in other stuff where it's like I just want to
Batman Family webtoon is a big
right,
example of that.
right.
Yeah.
And even if they have to explore it, that like Batman and Nightwing go out on a call and they fight goons while they talk about, you know, like life,
Stuff.
you know, it because that slice of life technically is them just autopilot beating on bad guys, you know. I think we like that, right?
Yeah, Totally.
I want to know about a time where like the X-Men go to Dave and Buster's and just hang out. You know?
Krakoa gets its first Dave and Buster's franchise. Will be an upcoming story.
Right.
Oh
Right.
man,
You know?
too good, too good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me tonight.
Yeah.
What I wanted to kind of wrap up with is for anybody watching, like, are there any particular series that, whether the ones that are upcoming or ones that have already maybe come and gone from this era of X-Men that you would recommend? Obviously, Hoxpox is the big one, but are there any in
Yeah.
particular that you're like, you should definitely read this if you haven't already?
I think that I'm trying to think of like what are the must reads for
Sure,
this
sure.
because you don't have to read everything in comics
Mm-hmm.
in general. You don't have to read everything. You can choose to.
You maybe
It depends
shouldn't
on
read
how.
everything, frankly.
Yeah. It depends on how much of a completionist you are, and you can Wikipedia the rest kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Read like technically you could start in the middle of an arc if you really wanted to, but I mean I don't think it's the most organic way to do it. But that being said, like read Hoxpox
Sure.
for sure. And then I would say this is bare minimum. I would say Hellfire Gala kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. I'm sure there's a trade coming out for it or already out for
Yeah,
just
I'd be
all of
surprised if there
Hellfire
isn't a
Gala.
collection that's just the Hellfire stories.
Hellfire Gala, which includes Planet Size X-Men #1.
Mm-hmm.
Then pick a series. Pick one series if you want to, you know?
Right,
Pick
right.
your favorite character. If your
Which one
favorite
has been
character is
your favorite? If you had to pick your favorite, what would
oh,
it be? Put you on the
Sword,
spot. Sword
Sword,
rules. Sword's pretty great.
and then it ended, and now it's going to be X-Men Red, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so I'm cool with that.
If you want to see
Sword is
Storm be the Queen of Mars, pick up
right,
X-Men Red.
right, right. Yeah, Fantabulous Logan sums it up. Hoxpox, Hellfire Gala, then Reader's Choice. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I
I would
think
give
that those,
a special shout out to Hellions in particular. I love Hellions. That one was
yeah.
that was great.
Hellions is good if you like the Outcasts. If you
Yes.
like the James Gunn kind
Yeah.
of weirdos put together, Hellions is
It's
kind of
the
like the
X-Men
Suicide
Suicide
Squad.
Squad. Yeah, it's the X-Men Suicide
Kind of.
Squad.
Yeah. Now, if you want the X-Men Black Ops stuff, that's X-Force.
Sure, yeah.
It's not always my thing, but I read it, obviously. Uh, but like cool characters, X Factor was a
Totally.
mystery, you know. Sword, and then X-Men proper. I think you've got to read X-Men proper, you
X-Men
know,
proper's really solid. And I
right?
like the way they try to do the like one and done stories or short two-parters, which makes it
Yeah,
good for people if you just want to pick up a random issue, you'll probably get a complete story in that, which is really cool.
right,
And
right.
I also want to give a shout out to I think Vita Ayala's run of the New Mutants specifically has been really solid. Where you're
New
getting a
Mutants.
lot of the younger generations and stuff. It's really cool.
What I something that is important to me as a comic book reader is finding characters I can grow up with,
Mm.
right? It's funny that now as an adult I'm identifying with Ted Cord Blue Beetle. You know, am
Sure,
I
yeah.
past my prime? Am I still relevant? You know, that sort of thing. But like when I was a kid, Young Justice was a big thing
Right, right.
because
Yeah.
Tim Drake, Cassie, Khan, Bart, they were all my age growing up, and then I followed them into Teen Titans, and you know I got to read Titans of Tomorrow when they did that like time travel
Right,
thing
right.
where it was like okay that's what they will grow up into, and I kind of like dreamed about like all the different ways. If you're young, get into New Mutants because
Sure,
these
yeah,
are
absolutely.
relatively fresh new characters that like you can grow up with, hopefully, with Scout and with uh 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 Cosmina, I believe her name is. Like
Yes,
these
yes.
are characters that you can grow up with. And like I
Totally.
also now identify with the New Mutants, the older New Mutants,
Right.
Sunspot specifically. And it's like I cuz they've grown up, you
Yeah.
know? And so it's kind of cool that like Fantabulous Logan says it's tough when your favorite comic characters don't get much love as you want. in this new era of X-Men, every X-Men character is like allowed,
Yeah.
because they have so many titles that, like, if you want to read about iBoy, is that his name?
Yes,
iBoy?
iBoy. Yeah.
You read X Factor. If you want to read about X-23, she doesn't go by X-23 anymore. Laura, she's the new Wolverine. She's in the X-Men comics, right? The new X-Men comics. And so there's enough comics out there for X-Men that, like, all your favorite characters are in it, one way or
Or
another.
going to pop up at some point, inevitably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me tonight. This was awesome. Hopefully, I will be back on Comic Talk soon. What Keeg stuff should people watch out for coming up this week?
Yeah, for sure. With the Keeg stuff, so obviously we got the Moon Knight after show that's going to start March 30th
Yes.
when Moon Knight comes out. We have a late night after show that we live stream like an hour after. So, like, episodes drop 12 p.m. midnight. We watch it, and then we come on at 1 a.m. Pacific time. Sorry, Pacific time. Midnight Pacific time, 1 a.m. Pacific time. 1 a.m. Pacific time is when we start the after show, and we just go for an hour, and we talk about it with a new guest every single time. So that's a late night. If you're gonna, I do not sleep. But if you're gonna stay up, a lot of people stay up to watch these Marvel and Star Wars shows. A lot of people do.
It's easy. I feel like it's easier for you on the West Coast to do that than me. I mean, maybe I'll be feeding my baby at 3:30 in the morning when Moon Knight drops, and I'll throw on the episode. But
we've been doing that for all the Marvel shows, and then we did that for Book of Boba Fett. So we had an after show for that. We have Comic Talk on Thursdays. We have Comic Talk on Thursdays. We have the Keeg back, which is just our hangout show on Friday nights. We do our topical discussions on the Keeg Talks. It's now called the Keeg Talks.
Okay.
On Saturdays. So the Keeg Talks, the Batman just happened, and we're gonna do Oscar Talk soon. And then
hardest working man on the internet right here.
We have a live audience podcast recording. We're going to be doing live and in person at the Friday of WonderCon. So WonderCon is April 1st. We're going to be doing a live one at an after party at Brewheim, which is a brewery down the street from Anaheim Convention Center. So we're having a big old after party with, like, some sponsors and whatnot.
I wish you could come near California.
I know.
I was wondering what that was all about. That sounds awesome, dude. Congrats.
Yeah. So I'm going to release more info as time goes on. But I'm hoping I can get, like, Michael to come out, because Michael's in NorCal.
Yes.
I'm hoping I can get him. I want to talk to Ambrosia because she's in Colorado. But it's both a great and not great thing that I've made friends with you and others that are in other states. Because before 2020, I wouldn't have. Now I do, and then I just get sad
that we can never see each other.
We're not seeing each other. But I want to come out there and do, like, a live show out there,
You should. New York Comic Con, baby. Let's make it happen.
I'm sure we could find one venue in New York that would pay for us to do a thing there.
Totally.
And then that could afford me to come out there, because
your steep price tag, I'm sure.
Yeah. Really quick before we get going, Fantabulous Logan had a question. Mutants face bigotry that is comparable to racism, but then they're gonna follow it up with a question. What comics are best for me to see how it affects the X-Men differently? That is interesting. If you want to deal with the X-Men dealing with the existential threat of extinction, I would read some of the comics that take place after the decimation. So I have these comics right here. These are all decimation era comics. X-Men the Day After has to deal with that. X-Men the 198. And that's pretty good. You deal with Beast having to deal a lot with that, the science of it. If you're dealing with I don't know if you have any suggestions, Brian.
You know what's funny? We were just talking about it, but I think I know that the question asker specifically said like ones about not so much that are allegorically about oppression,
Yeah,
but what I've found really interesting about Vita Ayala's New Mutants is the way that they approach what it's like for mutants who can pass as human versus mutants who are very clearly mutant because their mutation has manifested as maybe changing their skin or what their body looks like. Of course, God loves man kills. Yeah, the big one. That one
yeah,
is the ultimate X-Men as an allegory metaphor. But I think Vita Ayala stuff is kind of an interesting further exploration of that because then you get into discussions about again like passing. What does it mean if you're a mutant who is still able-bodied versus say like No Girl who is just a head in a floating jar? You know,
right.
it does a really cool job of exploring how being a mutant can be an incredible gift for some people, an incredible curse for others, and how they sort of manage that and respond to that and cope with that trauma of the
Yeah,
mutation. So I would say her story, the story of what was it, Cosmere that you mentioned? Uh,
Cosmina, is that what her name
Cosmina, I
is?
think that's what it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
Vita Ayala has done a really great job with that character, and I think their run of New Mutants, which I think started like issue 14, maybe. I don't remember the exact issue, but it was like
They
midway
did a
through the
weird
current run.
switching off in the New Mutants thing.
Yes, yes, but Vita Ayala has been the writer since that issue, and I would
Oh,
definitely recommend their run. I think it's been really phenomenal. So yeah, I
yeah.
would say that one. It does a good job of exploring. I think what you're looking for.
Yeah, Fantabulous Logan says passing is such a huge part of bigotry because it opens up divisions about privilege and that can split up
Right,
the X-Men.
right.
Yes, we have to as we take the real world like apply real world logic to it. By the way, Brian, I know we got to end soon. Am
No,
I
you're good. You're good.
okay? Um we have to apply this logic to it, right? Like real world logic states that yeah, somebody a mutant that's part of the Morlocks can't go out and shop at
Right,
Saks
right.
Fifth Avenue. You know, like they can't go and shop and go to groceries. You know, if you have tentacles coming out of your back, you can't. Just like in the real world, people who have um, disabilities or deformations, let's just say, or even a cases of and I like I've I've met people in real life, just working jobs, like people who've gotten acid thrown on their faces, you
Mm,
know, people who are burn victims, right?
yeah,
They have a physical difference that you can't see and they can't pass, right?
yeah.
Um, but then you also have like it's weird. People like Jay Farrow, you know, comedian, ex SNL person, famous, relatively so, who gets stopped by the cops, thrown up against a wall, and then he's like, "Check my ID, you'll see who I am." You know, does his fame and his money give him the privilege to not get harassed by cops? No.
Right.
You know, I'm sure, as beautiful as Storm is, if you don't know who Storm is in like the context of the comics, if she goes into an expensive store, she will get stopped for being black, which means that a black, even though she's beautiful, even though she's a mutant, even though whatever, for being black, that sets her apart. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that Jean Grey doesn't have to go through, right?
Right. And
And
what's
so,
cool about that run is the kids have that conversation with each other in a really interesting way. And
yeah,
the story basically involves the Shadow King kind of giving them this devil's
yeah,
bargain to be like, hey, I could fix your problems and make them
right,
go away if you just do X, Y, and Z for me. And it's a really
right.
good story. It was the one that was like, oh man, Vita Ayala is really operating on another level here with this book. So I definitely
I
recommend it.
thought Gabby was
Oh
gonna
man.
stay dead.
And then even that brought up an interesting ethical question too, because Gabby's a clone. Like, is it right
Right,
to bring Gabby back if she's just a copy of a copy almost? So awesome
right.
stuff. Really good. Really
Right, right,
good.
right. X-Men is amazing. You could literally scratch every itch that you have by just being in love with X-Men, which is kind of the cool thing. You could literally just stick to X-Men comics and not
Oh
read
my
any
god,
other
yeah.
comics, and you're fine. You're
And there are
fine.
people who basically do that, which is
Right,
fine, but it is
right,
people 100% do that.
right, right. And
I
I
I
mean,
have
that's great.
I had one totally off topic question that I had to ask you.
Yeah.
I don't get to see the Batman until it hits HBO Max next month.
Okay.
How is it? Did you like it? How is it?
I loved it. I gave it a 9 out of 10.
I want to see it so bad.
I gave it a 9 out of 10. I think that it depends on what you want out of a Batman movie. I posted a video stating 5 things. There's no spoilers in it. So if
on
you go
your
back
Keeg channel, on your TikTok, Keeg Cut?
on TikTok, yeah.
Okay, I'll have to find that.
About 5 things that I wanted, and all you got to know is I got 2.5 of them.
Okay. Hey.
So if they're not spoilers, it's just me before I went into the movie. What are the 5 things? And I got 2.5 of it. So whether or not, so 9 out of 10 because that final 10th would have been like just more. I think it was,
I haven't watched. I'm excited to watch your Keek episode about it when I finally watch it. But hearing everybody's reactions, because I haven't seen it yet. I don't want to watch it. Yeah. But hearing everybody's reactions to it this weekend has made the wait agonizing.
Everybody thinks that dark equals dark. That's it, right? Dark equals dark. But there is dark with the purpose of showing you the light inside versus dark just to be dark, which I think is Snyder. Snyder is just this pessimistic, kind of view on things. And even then, I think the themes that he tries to drive home, even though I disagree with it, he's valid for having those themes. I just think he should do those themes better. If you want to do a nihilistic take on it, he should do things better. If you want to do a nihilistic approach to Superman, that's your prerogative as your adaptation of Superman. But you got to be the best. My mom always told me as a kid, she was like, whatever you choose to be, you just got to be the best at it. If you want to be the best janitor, or if you want to be a janitor, be the best janitor. But Snyder, I don't think, is the best at what the values he's trying to show us.
That's fair. That's fair. So you feel
and I would
Batman,
say
darkness, but to show you the light. That's
the Batman is darker than Snyder's take. But I don't think that means anything. You get what I'm saying?
I think so.
Because dark doesn't equal dark.
Circle back to this conversation after I see it.
Yeah.
But I'm excited.
Yeah. There's a, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Here. I'm sorry it took me so long. I had a baby.
No, you did have a baby. You did have a baby, and that's awesome. And I'm happy for you.
I appreciate that.
But at the same time, next time I bring you on, I'm going to have you sign a contract stating your full undying support to Comic Talk, and how if you have plans with your kids, you got to get approved by me first. You got to shoot it by me.
Hopefully he'll be reading comics soon, so he can hop on and give his input.
Yeah.
On the
Yeah. It's only a couple of years. I mean, honestly speaking, only a couple of years till you can get the kids into age appropriate kid comics, right?
Totally. Yeah. I'm gonna pick up a lot of the Silver Age stuff too. It's his first reading materials. So I feel like those are good ones for kids.
Started Dark Knight Returns. I think that might be better. That might be better, right?
I think that's what happened to Zack Snyder. I think that's how he ended up the way that he is.
Give the kid Flashpoint to start off. What?
Brutal.
What? Yeah.
All right, man. You have a good night. Thank you so much, everybody out there watching. Have a good night, buddy.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks for everybody. Go follow Brian over at Captain Comics Rex.
Go follow the Keeg Show.
Thanks. I appreciate it. All right.
Have a good night, man.
Take care, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye.